everyone, and welcome to JKL Media, your podcast all about pop culture and all things entertainment related. May the grace and peace of God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ be with you. What do we turn in? Soon that will be clear. Today we are talking the Netflix miniseries Midnight Mass. And joining me today is Karen.
Hello.
Leading us in our discussion is my good friend Lou, and I am Jesse. So Lou, take us through this thing.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that intro, Jesse. And to all my brethren out there, to continue in a little bit of a religious theme, thank you for coming aboard and listening to us talk about Midnight Mass. This was a suggestion by me. I'm a big Mike Flanagan fan and horror fan, obviously, if you know my other work with the Stephen King podcast. It took a little cajoling to get Jesse to come on board because he is not a horror fan, and that's one of the things I want to discuss with him. Karen, as we were talking before off camera, has already seen the other two miniseries that Flanagan's done for Netflix, which of course is the Haunting of Hill House and the Haunting of Bly Manor. So she's versed in the Mike Flanagan verse, and I'm looking forward to talking to Karen and Jesse about this because Karen has not seen Midnight Mass, and I think it's Flanagan's best work to date, but we'll find out what my two friends think about that. But I just want to get, before we dive into it a little bit, I just want to get both of yours general impressions, no specifics, just your overall feeling and vibe. And is it what you expected from a horror show? Are you surprised, bewildered? Well, why don't we start with you, Karen?
Enthralling, for one thing. I was very entertained through the whole episode, riveted to it. It's very much like the other, I mean, not in tone or anything, but I was also riveted by his other two Netflix shows.
Mm-hmm.
You can't sit there and do something else. Like you can't play solitaire while you're watching it. For one thing, I didn't want to. And for another, you have to watch what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of little things. And I dig that. I know he's a big Stephen King fan.
Mm-hmm.
And he and Stephen have a friendship now. And you can see a lot of that influence in his shows.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Jesse.
So one of my favorite creative people is Ken Burns, and his documentaries are always amazing. And I remember on the baseball documentary, someone made a statement that Johnny Bench was not a catcher who can hit, but a hitter who can catch.
Mm.
And last night, Linda and I watched the first two episodes. This was the second time for me. It was the first time for her. And I said, this isn't a horror show with drama thrown in. This is a drama with a little bit of horror thrown in.
Mm-hmm. Very perceptive.
I really, really liked these first two episodes.
Okay.
Yeah, and like I said, this is I don't know what's coming, and I know this is 7 episodes, but the first 2 episodes, I truly felt like this is a drama, a really heavy, entertaining story
Mm-hmm.
that just happens to have a few horror touches in it, but it's mostly a drama about people and people's lives.
Right.
Yeah, he's very character driven, which is one of I need that in order to really love something.
Yeah.
I want to see characters develop. I want to learn more about them. I want to identify whether it's because I hate them or I love them. It doesn't matter as long as I have feelings about them. That's very important to me.
Right.
Well, and then I'll let you go back, but like I got a little bit of crap from our mutual friends, Charles Skaggs and DJ Nick, because I did not enjoy Moon Knight whatsoever. And because I didn't care about any of the characters.
Right.
Not even Isaac's characters?
No, I didn't.
Really?
I mean, I appreciate the
His
acting on the show,
sure,
but I just didn't care about the character.
Yeah.
And if you don't care about characters, it won't work for me.
Right.
You know, so I don't know if I'm going to get totally wrong on this,
Mm-hmm.
but for now, this is a hell of a drama. And so I'm really glad you pushed me a little bit to watch it.
Okay, cool. That's great to hear, because I would not want you to have this turn out to be a chore. And I was knowing you, I was pretty comfortable with suggesting this series to you.
Yeah.
So I guess I should have asked off the top, are either of you Catholic?
Mm-mm.
So I am.
Okay.
Linda I converted. And so I was raised Southern Baptist, and
Mhm.
about 80, we got married in 84. So about probably 82, 83 is when I converted. And so I am not a very strong practicing Catholic,
Sure.
but yes, I am. So I'm certainly aware of the Mass and the order of the Mass,
Mhm.
and also a lot of the things. And that is one of my nitpicks I will bring up when we get to a little specific.
Okay.
I was raised Assembly of God, which
Okay.
is that weird niche. I mean, it was Jim and Tammy Baker's church and all that.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't into it almost from the beginning, but it did give me this foundation. I feel like it gives you a set of morals and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I wasn't familiar with the Catholic rituals and stuff,
Mhm.
but I am familiar with the kind of things that happen with the idolatry and things like that. So
Right.
it was interesting to see that sort of thing.
Okay. So I'm very encouraged by both of your comments, and I think that you're in for a heck of a ride. And there are horror elements, Jesse. They will be coming in later on, as you probably
Okay.
suspected. But
Yes.
I think the trick with a good horror story, and I want to preface this by saying there's so many different types of horror. And when I hear people say they don't like horror, I usually assume that they're talking about what people typically think of, like the Freddy, Jason slasher
Yeah.
type of stuff. And I was assuming that's what you were saying when you didn't like horror. Like you don't like gratuitous gore for the
Yes,
sake of
right.
gore. Right. So there's this character-driven type of horror, which I really love. And this miniseries that we're reviewing has 7 episodes, and we're doing it in 4 installments, which I think will work out perfectly, because the last one means that we only have the finale, and then we can use what would be the other half of talking about a second episode to talk about the series as a whole. So I think this is
Okay,
going to work out
perfect.
really well. And if you just go through the episode titles, they're broken down as books, and we go through Genesis, Psalms, Proverbs, Lamentations, Gospel, Acts of the Apostle, and Revelation. So this is going to be a very interesting experiment to see how things work out. And I think the other thing that I'm curious to see is how, because the reason I asked for your religious background is because rituals have a way of dulling one's senses, I guess is the way I would put it. And you would accept things that outside of that context, you would question, why is this being done? But within the context of this environment, you'll accept them. And I'm curious for people who have, like, especially strong Catholic backgrounds, how they reacted to this series, because I don't think there's any intentional slighting of any religion, because we have a character that's a Muslim. So I found that a very interesting conclusion. So the show is obviously not trying to make a specific knock against a particular religion. And it's interesting because Mike Flanagan was raised Catholic, so he's very familiar with these rituals and that. So Jesse said you might have an issue with something. I think if you do, it's probably because he did it for dramatic purposes, perhaps. So
Yeah.
But anyhow, we can get into that. So we've set the stage here, and as Karen pointed out, and you too, Jesse, that this is a drama with horror elements. These first 2 episodes are really setting the stage of the world of Midnight Mass, Crockett Island, the inhabitants, and we're getting to know the characters, and especially in the second episode, we're getting to know the dark side of the relationships and basically how everybody's related or not related on the island. So with the island is like a microcosm of a society. So with that in mind, there's a lot of characters here, and it's going to be hard to keep them all straight, but we'll probably just dive into the first episode then, and the setup with Zach Gilford's character and the accident. And how did that play for you guys?
So Karen, you want to start?
Sure. It's hard for me to forgive drunk drivers, but for some reason they made Riley likable, mostly because he takes complete and full responsibility for the accident.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, that was, oh my God, I'm not going to like this guy because here he is. He's all drunk. He sees that he's killed someone and he's kind of ambivalent. But then they got to the point where he gets sentenced and you can see he's just, yep, I deserve it. I need to go to jail. And I was I wouldn't say happy, but I felt better about his character, knowing that he takes responsibility. Also seeing how things happen for him in prison that changed him when he comes back to the island. The fact that he's an atheist, where a lot of people find religion in prison. That was very interesting to me, that he just completely gave up his faith 100%. And I think that might be because he's the type of person that copped to his crime. He's not looking for redemption in prison. He already knows he's not redeemable, in his mind at least. And so he goes through that. And seeing the interaction between him and his parents, we get that little flash of his parents in the past when they're there, and they're pretty much the only people there for him in the courtroom. And then seeing how his mother interacts with him and how his father is just the opposite, that he and his brother are a little disconnected. I mean, just those family dynamics were interesting. And then, of course, with he and Aaron, we know there's a path there. We haven't gotten into all of it. And Aaron definitely has her thing going on with her mom and all that. But we see Riley and Aaron trying to get on a footing again after being separated for so. And before he moved to Chicago, even, it sounds like she fled. She ghosted him. He ghosted her. They were gone from each other's lives. And prison wasn't the thing that separated them. So I think that's going to be interesting. And I wanted to say one thing to Jesse. If it's anything like the other two series, it's going to ramp up real quick.
Okay.
So just be prepared. We've already gotten a little bit of Riley accepting that he sees this girl that he killed every night.
Yes.
And the way they turn the camera so that she's on the side. I got to say one thing about that. When they turn the camera and you see her sideways, I actually turned my head once and she is chilling if you see her correctly. Whereas if you see her on the side, you can almost separate her not being a person. But man, when you look at her where she's on the same plane as you, wow.
Yeah.
And I'll just add that vertical horizontal shot, that is a Mike Flanagan trademark. He does that in every film that you will watch by him. So
yeah, he wants you to see things from a different angle.
Yeah.
Which I like. That's him telegraphing to you.
Yeah.
You got to look at this through his eyes.
Yeah.
So yeah, his character is super interesting.
So to give a little background, I don't like being scared. So when I say I don't like horror, I don't like being scared.
Okay, well, again, prepare yourself.
Right.
There's
But
going to be a little of that.
95% of Stephen King's books I enjoy reading because I like the story. So my first thought is, you've got Zach playing Riley, and Zach Gilford was QB1 on Friday Night Lights. He was the backup that, because of injuries, had to step up and be the quarterback. And Friday Night Lights is by far one of my favorite TV series of all times.
He's the good Saracen brother, right?
Yes. He is just one of my favorite actors, and I've liked everything he's been in. And so I immediately am drawn to him.
Right.
And I agree with Karen. In fact, there are people who will say you should never use the word accident in a drunk driving incident because it wasn't an accident. You deliberately chose to drink and drive. And to see him, please tell me she's okay. Please tell me she's okay. And he starts praying, and then the paramedic, right, is like, yeah, while you're out there, why don't you ask God how come the young ones die? And to see him get that scene in the courthouse where all of her family are there just wanting justice for her, and he looks like he's still stunned and doesn't argue, he doesn't put up a defense. He just immediately, you could just see him telling his defense attorney, no, I just no. So
yeah, and her side is filled.
Yes,
it's completely filled with everybody who loved her. Yes. And his side is just like his parents.
And you established very quickly that he is, quote, pun, no pun intended, haunted by the vision of her seeing her and knowing what he's done. And he is a true lost soul. And I do think it's interesting, his comment about many people find religion in jail. I found my atheist, being an atheist. And the whole idea that his parents, yes, you're going to mass. What do you mean? There's not even a choice about it. It just made for a great setup. And so I don't know if he will continue to be our lead, but for now, he is the character's journey I'm enjoying the most so far, with maybe the exception of Erin. And I know we'll get to her in a little bit. I do not recognize her from anything else, but she is such an interesting, likable character that right away I'm into this world.
Okay. So fun fact, that's Mike Flanagan's wife in real life.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And if you watch any other Mike Flanagan projects, much like Frank Darabont, he has a stable of actors that he uses in almost everything. So a lot of these characters in this series are in the other two series as well. And his wife is in all of them. And her first big break with him came when there's a little Netflix movie called Hush, where she plays a deaf woman living in a cabin out in the woods, and she's terrorized by this guy. It's a pretty interesting project. But yeah, Flanagan reuses a lot of the cast from his other works. And this one is no exception. There's a thing with Kate Siegel that she's somebody that I don't think under a normal course of events probably would have been as recognizable, or has become as recognizable as she has. But nepotism in the entertainment industry is obviously a big thing. But to her credit, she's got the goods. Like she's been fantastic in everything that she's done. And there's some stuff coming up in this that both of you are going to just like go, wow, that's pretty impressive.
So when you hear that, is that similar to like Frances McDormand?
Yeah.
Who is married to the Joel Cohen, I think I know she's married to one of the Cohen brothers.
Okay.
And she has had
she gets
into a lot of their shows. Like I first saw her in the film Fargo.
Right.
And she's an amazing actress. So so that's good. Yeah. I really liked Kate Siegel and that character.
Yeah.
I kind of dig that he reuses. When I watched Bly Manor, of course, he reuses all these same actors and actresses. Kate Siegel, Raul Cooley's in that, Annabeth Gish, and even though Carla Gugino was only in that first episode of Midnight Mass, she's in his stuff as well. So I love seeing them transplanted into a different series, but completely different characters.
Yeah,
and it really shows their depth as an actor or actress.
Well, and the great John Ford did that. He had a set group of actors who would be his, not only like he reused John Wayne a lot, but he had a series of supporting actors that would be in all of John Ford's different movies. And I did not catch that Carlo Giuliano was the judge. She's one of my favorite actresses. I've loved her ever since that Karen Sisko TV series that was only a one and done season, but I thought she was amazing in that. Would have loved to see more Karen Sisko. She was great in Watchmen. She's one of my favorite actresses.
Well, then we might have to do the other two series.
Okay, good.
Because she's in those much more.
Yeah, she's heavily featured in both of those.
She played several Karens, by the way.
Yeah. Looking on what we're doing here, I think the best way to approach this probably is just go through the characters, because there's just so many story threads and it's just so intertwined, and the cast is so large. And we'll talk
about the story as we talk.
So we've talked about Zach, and this is, for me, that was the first time seeing him in anything. I've never watched Friday Night Lights, so I was really impressed with what's a very internalized role, and I think Mike Flanagan really does his best to externalize what this character is going through the use of the camera flipping and whatnot. But if obviously his relationships with his parents really shows that off as well. And Kate Siegel as Erin, she's basically come back and taken over her mother's position. She's a school teacher, and her and Riley both are her and Riley have both left the island, probably glad to get away from there, but it sounds like they both also got lost. and they've come back to the island. So they've had parallel paths, not obviously exactly the same, but he's committed a sin, and depending on your standards, you could say that Erin has committed a sin as well, because she's
in the Catholic Church, it is a sin, right?
Right.
To have sex outside of marriage. So
let's touch on probably the next, even though he doesn't show up until later in the first episode, is Hamish Linkletter, who I'd never seen before, as Father Paul Hill. What did you think of him?
Okay.
Karen?
He was in several shows that I watched.
Okay.
He was in Legion, a big part of Legion.
Okay.
And he was in, and this is so dumb, but he played Christine's brother in the new whatever of the old Christine, a sitcom.
All right.
With,
yeah. With the girl from
Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, he played her brother, which if you want to see him in another type of role, I suggest you at least watch a couple episodes of that, because he is hilarious in that.
Okay.
He plays the role of the goofball in that. He is in Legion. He is one of the bad guys. He's part of the bad corporation, and he has a limp and he's been burnt. So he has to play off of that as well. And he's just completely I've seen him in a lot of different things, but those two in particular gave me a background on him. And I think he's a really talented actor in this role, even more so, because he is, you know exactly who he is, but you also don't know exactly who he is. He's a priest. You know what a priest is, right? I mean, you can take all of these suppositions from him being a priest, but then we have all that mystery behind it. What's the deal with the chest? Person knocking in the chest. What is that all about? How is he healing people? He seems very progressive. He's open and honest with people, even if they're not into Catholicism, like Riley isn't. He talks very plainly with Riley. He does get his point across. He says, well, on the flip side, here's what I think. Yeah. But he doesn't condemn him. He just says, you know, I get that you're an atheist. I understand. And I can see where that could be a progression for you. But let me tell you my side of things. And I feel like we're seeing this. He's definitely a servant of God, which makes him a good person. And they're telegraphing that. But there's also that, is he really the good guy? Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of shades of gray in his stuff, Mike Flanagan stuff. There's not really a good guy, bad guy. Even the people that you think are bad guys turn out to not be. You know, there's another reveal. I mean, in Hill House, you think that this one thing is bad, and then you find out right near the end, it's something that you never would have guessed. And I'm guessing you know what I'm talking about, Lou. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but ouch.
Yeah.
Neck.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like we're heading towards that sort of thing here, that we're going to see these characters develop and see that they're all shades of gray.
Right.
So the actor was in the newsroom, and and I, being a huge Aaron Sorkin fan, he ends up being a unscrupulous character in the newsroom. So, but I know he's been in other things. I think it was an interesting reveal, right? Like and I know we're going to get to who so far to me is the villain of the show, the character that's the bossy head of the church, right?
Bev.
Yeah, Bev. Yeah, I know we'll get to her in a minute, but Bev is looking for them, the Monsignor, to come back. We get the new priest that's saying, like, hey, I'm here for a little while. He seems to be really nice, but like Lynn and I both like, man, we get a little weird vibe from him. Not as much as Bev. Bev Keane is definitely someone that you go,
yeah, she's like the evil nurse from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
She is this, yeah. And then with a smile on your face, like she's calling you horrible things, and at the same time with just their eye in her face. And the whole, this is how we do things, and
Yeah.
I'm not even going to think about doing something different.
Yeah. She even calls
was-
the father out for wearing the wrong chalice.
Yep.
Yes, which was, I thought was really interesting, because it is, I can't keep track of what colors are, but obviously she would have, right?
And
Like,
honestly, who cares?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she would have known that. So really, really, I think we have an interesting concept of, I don't know. And before we get back to other things we haven't talked about is the actual, I think the island is a character in itself.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yep.
All with all apologies to Lost.
Yeah.
There is this, you see some beautiful sunrises and sunsets when they're showing the skyline.
Mhm.
But the island itself, everything is dirty and worn out, and there's junk everywhere. I mean, this is a horrible, and we set the stage. We find out there's only 127 people, I think they say, and the island used to be this thriving fishing village, but because of the oil spill,
Mhm.
they've not recovered, and they can't, there's all this economic troubles that they're fighting against. So I just think that's a great setting
Mhm.
for, once again, not just a horror, but drama. The idea of, I need to get out of this place, but how do I escape?
Yep.
And much like Aaron and Riley, the island is also lost.
Yes.
And I hate to use lost in the
Mhm.
context of an
Yeah.
island, but the island was one thing, and now it's left that
Yeah.
and become another thing that doesn't know where to fit in.
Yeah.
Um,
And to drive it even further, all the people on the island feel lost because
Right.
they've lost so much. So
Yeah.
they're all like outcasts.
Yeah.
Yep.
And skipping to Michael Trucco, who plays the mayor, right? I knew him from Babylon, not Babylon 5, from Battlestar Galactica. So it was good to
and
see him.
Castle,
Yes.
he's our Castle connection.
Yes.
Um,
And so
He played Tom Deming, who we hated because
yes. So that's neat to see. So, and he seems to like to be, he's really playing that New England. Linda asked the question, like, what is the mainland? What part of New England is that? And I go, I don't know. I don't think they ever established, but you assume it's off somewhere in New England,
Mhm.
one of those New England states that are on the coastline. But he's really playing that accent. Pretty good character to start out with. You like, this is a really good guy that's trying to do the best he can for his community.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted to come back to Jesse on Father Paul Hill. What's your feeling or read on the character? Do you like him? You don't trust him? You dislike him?
I have mixed feelings about him.
Mm-hmm. He gives a heck of a sermon, though.
Yeah, he does give a good sermon, but he does seem to be, at times, he almost seems unsure of himself. Like there is a point where after the mass, and they didn't show this, but they said, "Oh, we haven't heard the old rituals in a while." And he answers, and I don't, for those of you who are not Catholic, they a few years ago they changed the order of they changed some of the responses in the mass. And I started going to church when I started dating Linda in like 1984, and the phrase "peace be with you."
Mm-hmm.
You
And also
respond to
with
it,
you.
yes, but now that it's with your spirit. When you say "peace be with you," they go, "and with your spirit," because they said that was closer to the original Latin. But to a lot of people, that just doesn't seem wrong, right? Karen just said it: "Peace be with you," and also with you.
Right.
You know,
And I'm not even Catholic.
yes, and so there are things that, and it seems like he's saying the wrong things. So he wore the wrong clothes. He said the wrong things. You wonder, my first thought is Father Paul even a priest? Is he somehow doing something that this is a way to hide? And that's partly because, there was a short-lived sitcom where the actor who played Lex Luthor in Smallville pretended to be a pastor because he was a criminal and he was trying to get away, and they played it kind of a funny way. So I am not sure if Father Paul is actually a priest or not, that he may be something I don't trust him yet because of a couple of clues.
Okay. Let's talk about, as you already mentioned, if you want to add anything further, I don't think Karen had really a chance to talk about her yet, is Samantha Sloyan as Bev Keane.
I've known so many Bev Keens. I know I've told this story before. I don't know if it was here, but I was in the choir in church. And sitting there, you are part of the ministry of the church. If you're in the choir, you are imparting some sermon-y type things to the congregation. Well, the whole time we're sitting up there and people are filtering in, there's lots of Bevs around me talking about, she's wearing that dress, it's not good, she got a divorce last year, she shouldn't be here, what a hussy, that guy is sleeping with some other. And it was a lot of Bevs bringing judgment down on people and just not being very Christian-like, whereas she's kind of being Christian-like, but also she's throwing a lot of shade, she's doing bad things, you just know she's not a good person. And we also learned that she has forced the town to take these settlements and use the settlements in order to better herself. And that's a big church thing too, is taking money and turning it into an airplane that you use to minister to your flock. It's a lot of different things, but I see them all in Bev.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to say hated, but I hated those ladies. And they were part of why I left the church. And I wasn't in Assembly of God at that point. I was, I can't remember what it is. It has a flag. But anyway, I know that's terrible. I am not a religious person at all. But back then I wanted to be. And I feel like those kind of things tainted me. So I have this huge bias against Bev personally. And then she's terrible. And she's just a terrible person. And again, character driven. If I hated her that much, that's a good character.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I want to lock her in that closet with all that rat poison and
Yeah, her scene with at the council meeting talking about get ready for the storm when the sheriff was making suggestions, the way she is so condescending in her, her
we
replies
already
to her.
Know that. Yeah.
So I she just comes across as not just evil, but evil on several layers, which is good because if she was just a one note thrill, that would become boring very quickly. But she's got this undercurrent stuff going on all the time, but not just with the sheriff, but with Aaron and whoever she talks to. So yeah, she's the actress that plays her. She's really doing a good job, and I'm really impressed with her.
I noticed you didn't take communion.
Yes.
I mean, she's just Miss Judgy McJudgerson. I'm sorry. She is the definition of holier than thou.
Yeah.
She really is. And yes, great job by the actress. She looks wonderful. But someone posted this and I really feel like it. And we will not get into politics on this episode, but there was a point when I would drive by and I would see an American flag on someone's front porch or on their front of their house, I would feel a sense of pride. And now then I cringe thinking, is that a symbol that they are supporting a certain political party and former president that is not have beliefs that I support? Right. And the same thing, I almost want to, when someone professes their Christianity, and I'm being very careful here, are they the kind of Christian or the judgmental kind of Christian, right?
Right.
And so she is the judgmental kind of Christian. She is an old joke, the religious right is neither religious nor right. She does not serve, it appears, a Christ-like attitude, versus Father Paul so far does seem to be showing that. So very great character. I think, as you said, if you dislike her that much, you know that's something about her. And she has this air of superiority about her that is just really, really interesting to see.
Right. Okay. Well, there's still a lot of characters go through, so I'm just
Yeah.
going to pick a couple of pairs
Sure.
because I think, and then if there's any other after that you want to mention,
Right.
that's fine. But let's talk about Riley's parents, played by Henry Thomas from E.T.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Henry
hard
Thomas
to
is,
see that he's grown up, right?
Yeah.
and he's
Yeah.
been in every Flanagan series
Yep.
as well. So,
I,
and
the kid is now playing the father, which tells you just how long ago
Yep.
it was, right?
yes, and the wife is played by
Kristen Lehman.
Kristen Lehman, yes, as Annie Flynn. And there's an interesting relationship there. It's in some ways stereotypical that it's the mother that's really working hard to keep the family together, and the father's stepped back. But that evolves over the first two episodes, and he's actually a little more nuanced than that. So what do you think of Riley's parents?
So I'll kick us off. Lynn and I have talked about that we don't understand people that stop loving their child because of either their choices
Mhm.
in relationships or coming out that they have, whether they are embracing an alternate lifestyle, they come out that your child is always your child, but that doesn't mean you necessarily have to like their behaviors. And
Mhm.
I thought that Riley's dad plays that very well.
Mhm.
He loves his son, but it is hard for him you killed someone. And we don't know at this point what their relationship was before the accident, but it does not appear that it was a close one. At least my gut is. And yes, the mom Annie is trying to keep her family together. She is focused on, it doesn't matter what Riley's done. He's my son. He's my oldest, and he's come home. The
Mhm.
prodigal son returns, to keep this biblical theme. And I love that their definition, right? Like, yes, they're happy to be there, but they didn't take time to they didn't take the junk out of his room.
Mhm.
And they still have these posters, and I assume those are Easter eggs because they're 7 and there's other horror films. I didn't know if that is a little Easter egg for
Mhm.
Mike Flanagan's favorite films or something, is what I
Right.
pictured that to be.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, but great dynamic and realistic, that's saying, yes, I love you. Yes, I'm glad you're here, but can I get past the fact that you got drunk and killed a young woman? So
Yeah.
really, really interesting.
Well, I feel like the poster of 7 in particular, it maybe not an Easter egg, but it's the 7 deadly sins, which are very biblical.
Yes, good point.
And especially in the Catholic Church, where if you commit any of those 7 deadly sins, that's it. You're done, right? At least that's what I take from things that happen. It's very hard to be forgiven.
Those
after
are
you commit.
those are the more of the, you definitely need to go to confession about those. Those are the big ones. There's
Right.
the smaller sins and there's the bigger sins. Yes.
Right. So I feel like we see that he's already become disconnected with the Catholic Church
Yeah.
just through that little poster over his bed, that he's watched something that's sacrilegious, I'm
Mhm.
guessing.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a big drop in to him, that telegraph of he headed even back when he was a teen
Mhm.
towards leaving the church.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah. I
Very
do
good.
too.
Okay, let's touch on. I do have one more single character before we get to the last pair. Raoul Coley as Sheriff Hassan, or as Sheriff.
Sharif, yeah.
Yeah.
Sharif, as Joe Coley, the town drunk, calls him. He's been in other Flanagan works as well, and I found it very interesting that Flanagan made a deliberate choice to include another religion representation in the show with this Muslim sheriff. What do you think of him, Jesse?
So I loved him from iZombie. He was one of the favorite characters in iZombie.
So good.
Right.
If you've not watched iZombie, it is definitely worth. It is a funny zombie movie. I know, people might say, no, I've watched Walking Dead, I don't need another zombie series. This is so well done.
It's so different too.
It's so different. And yeah. So he was a very likable character in that, and he's likable in this.
Mhm.
He is a good man. he's the scene in the city council, right? The little bitty city council brought back so many memories of when I changed jobs. Over my past 3 or 4 job changes, I've been brought in as a manager of an existing team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there is that you have to go over, we don't do it that way, Jesse.
Right.
You know, no, we tried that and that didn't work. And as simple as current job, they did not have, and I'm going to talk call centers for a bit. They did not have scheduled breaks and lunches. You just
go when you go.
Yeah, you just Teams, you send a little message to whoever's the manager. Hey, can I take my break? Yes. And then, oh, well, now then I've waited too long. You need to take your break. And I'm like, no, based on call volume, we should do scheduled breaks and lunches. We don't do that here, Jesse. So I felt his frustration is, he's just trying to get this. We're going to have a storm. We need to make sure everyone's safe. Let's go through this. And they're just rolling their eyes at him going, you just don't get this, do you? And I feel his frustration. Very likable.
He feels like that's part of his job.
Yes.
So he's just doing his job. And they're shooting him down the whole time. And it gives you that feeling of alienation.
Yes. And then the other idea, well, we know you're Muslim, but you should come to mass anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Not saying, hey, we host a non-denominational celebration that we'd love for you to join. It's like, no. You should come to mass because you're not going to fit in unless you do this. And I think it was very interesting. I don't know if this is supposed to be a clue, but the couple times I saw them pray, the son, man, is up off his knees and folding his prayer
mat.
Prayer mat. The moment the dad ceased to be. And I don't know what the story is, but the idea of making his son kiss the picture of his mom every night was sweet, yet also a little creepy. Like, kiss your mother goodnight.
I love the texting thing too.
Yeah.
Where he's telling him, don't text. And the minute he shuts the door, he picks it up. And he knows already.
Yeah.
He's texting 10 minutes and put the phone down.
Yeah. That was, they have a nice relationship. I was like to see that. So yeah.
I feel like it's different in each direction though. The son he's okay with not letting his dad in on stuff. He wants to fit in with the other boys.
Right.
But when they're at home, they have this close father and son relationship. So I feel like he's putting on a face both places.
Well, and it is not fitting in as a teenager is one of those things that, once again, we are talking about alienation. We have the alienation of the island. We have the alienation of a son and father that are a different religion. The alienation of Riley, I don't even believe, much less being a practicing Catholic, I'm not. So there's a lot of alienations being shot in this. And going back to, I don't think we've talked about Erin, right, too much, but like Erin has the alienation of she's now a teacher, but she's showing and she's out of wedlock. So that alienation of that. So really, really setting up well.
Yeah, there's a lot of characters in that situation, and that brings up one of the pairs that I wanted to talk about is the girl, the mayor's daughter, Lisa Scarborough, who's in the wheelchair,
right,
and Robert Longstreet as Joe Colley, the town drunk, and you discover in the second episode that their paths have intersected in a pretty tragic way. So, what are your thoughts on those two characters and their storyline?
He shot her, right?
Yeah,
accidentally when he was drunk. That's what I get from everything.
Yeah.
So they were out somewhere in the same vicinity. He was messing around with the gun while he was drunk, went off, and he shot her. I think he is ashamed, and he also accepts responsibility in that he doesn't go places where she is in order to keep her from becoming angry, keep her from all this hatred that and he understands. Yeah, I get it. And it's also a drunk accident, just like Riley. So we have that parallel between Riley and
Joe Colley.
Joe, thank you. I also loved the scene where Joe was in jail and he says, "So you're going to keep me locked up?" And then the sheriff opens the door.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
not so much. And he calls him Sharif, which I think is, he's doing it in a way that's like, yeah, I get that you're the sheriff. I get it. I bow to you, but I'm not going to really pay attention. And we do see that later on when Bridge is at his house and he shows up and he's like, he wants to lay down the law. Can I search everything? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
What's the point of me searching? Because it's not like I can really do anything. If you got hard drugs or whatever, what am I going to do? Lock you up in the jail here and then send you on the ferry? I mean, there's not really much he can do. And Bridge is also Bull is also, he goes out on the ferry every day to work. So again, he's not like a fixture there all day, every day. And I feel like he's really stuck. And again, Joe is, I feel bad for him through most of this stuff. And I also kind of hate him, which gives me that same thing. And Lisa puts off a little of that Bev Jr. vibe, but also sympathetic. So there's a lot of that. And of course, we see Joe's dog die. That's Joe, right? Yep. With the dog. And that was heartbreaking. That was just, how can that be something that and Bev is just unfeeling about it. Who cares if his dog died? I don't like him anyway. I don't like Joe. I don't like that dog. Who cares?
Yeah.
And it also shows that side of Bev, where she's making a big deal out of this potluck, melting potluck, that, the town comes together and we all love each other. And then all of a sudden the guy's dog died and she's like, well.
So here's my nitpick. Wednesday is Ash Wednesday. It is a day of fasting in the Catholic Church. You don't eat meat. You are only supposed to have one meal a day and maybe a small snack. You would never, ever have a festival on Ash Wednesday.
Interesting. I'll have to check that out because that doesn't seem like something Flanagan would deliberately.
What you should have it is they would have had it on Fat Tuesday, Mardi Gras. What you should have done is seen that on Tuesday, and then because Ash Wednesday is a day of solemnness. So you would never have a festival. It's like, and during the 6 weeks of Lent, you don't eat meat on Fridays. There is this whole thing. So that is something that both Linda and I laughed at. She's like, yeah, you would never do a carnival on Ash Wednesday. And it isn't even like having like a wake during a wedding. It's just, you would not serve fried shrimp and ham sandwiches with a lot of mayo at the dinner after after a service at a Jewish temple. It's just totally against the service. Okay. So that's
I never would have caught that.
No, never. Yeah. Unless the only thing I wonder if he did that deliberately.
Yeah.
There might be maybe to show some hypocrisy. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because some of the people were still walking around with the ash cross on their faces.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to leave that all day, right?
Right. You let that stay all day. Yes. In fact, growing up, I wasn't Catholic, and I remember seeing in high school someone, and I went to go, oh, you've got a smudge on your forehead. They had to stop me, right? Yeah. And then we haven't talked about Annabeth Gish, one of my favorite actors.
Okay.
She was amazing in West Wing, playing the oldest Bartlett daughter. She was in a very short-lived Showtime series called Brothers, I believe was the name of it. It was set in the Boston area. The whole idea was there were brotherhood, two brothers that both very well-known actors at this point. The Jason Isaac played the bad brother. Yeah, he played like the brother that was involved in criminal ability. Jason Clark played the brother that was into politics.
Oh, okay.
And so they were the Caffey brothers. truly a wonderful series that it was based in Rhode Island, and it is a great series that I recommend strongly. And she was in that as well. So Annabeth Gish is one of my favorite actresses, and I think she's really good in this as someone who's come home to take care of his elder mother.
Yep.
And luckily she's also a doctor, right? So and they need that. So yeah, really, really great character.
Okay, cool. So two more things I want to talk about.
Okay.
First thing is, what did you think about the music in this series? Like, you've got the Neil Diamond song at the beginning, and then of course, anytime there's like hymns, it's just like there's something, like, even if you're not a religious person, there's something, I don't know, emotionally appealing, gives you warm feelings. It just really, I really found his use of music in these two episodes quite masterful.
Yeah, it is. And then I think the second episode, right, they did it is not Harry Chapin singing lead, but it is a song off Harry Chapin's live album. I think where his brother
Tom Chapin.
Yeah, Tom Chapin is singing it. Absolutely beautiful worth of music. I love the spiritual hymns, the a cappella. I agree. I'm so glad you brought that up, Lou, because yes, that was one of the things that as Lynn and I were watching, she said, "Oh man, what beautiful music." And I agree. Really, really well done.
Okay.
Yeah. Several Neil Diamond songs in that first episode.
Which I thought was fun. I was like, like, oh.
And completely opposite. Like Suleiman is different from And the Grass Won't Pay No Mind. It's completely different. And then we got the Leonard Cohen song, Democracy. And that's at the Crock Potluck. Bartender by the Dave Matthews Band there as well. And then If You Could Read My Mind, which was covered by that local band.
Right.
Yeah.
And just interesting choices because it feels like they don't fit, but they do.
Yes.
There's a component in there that's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
And Neil Diamond, picking those two, like, really not well-known Neil Diamond songs, but you just know it's Neil Diamond.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no one else that sings like him. If you don't know that's Neil Diamond, you've never heard Neil Diamond.
Yeah, I was like, oh, yeah, I love that. I did not recognize the songs, but I did with his voice, obviously, right?
Yep.
You're like, oh, that's Neil Diamond. It was so well done.
Well, it helps if you have the closed captioning on because it says Suleiman, and it's by Neil Diamond.
Now,
or whatever.
yes, and I do think we laughed about this. We had the captions on, and there is a point where it says eerie music playing. Okay. Like, all right, well, thanks for letting us know that something's about to happen, possibly. Yes.
Yeah, they telegraphed that a lot with the music.
Yeah.
Which I was okay with. I love that.
That always makes me laugh. Like the beginning, I'm going to talk about Parks and Rec for just a second. The beginning of Parks and Rec, it's not always the same closed captioning over their theme song. Sometimes it's energetic music. Sometimes it's happy music. So, I don't get it.
Even though it's the same piece of music.
Right, exactly.
And
I wanted to mention also that Annabeth Gish played Ben's sister on Parks and Rec.
And
it was only in one episode, but it was something that sticks in my mind as she was really good in that role.
Right.
She's totally ashamed of him. And she was ridiculed her whole life because of what he did to the town. So I really liked her in that as well. But every time I see her in something, I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. She's great.
Yeah, and she is truly, and she is from a very prestigious, the Gish family, right? She is. So she
from
she
the beginning of entertainment, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to discuss was the what's to this point has been the undercurrent of these two episodes is the horror elements of it. We've got some weird stuff going on with the cats. We've had some swooping flyover shots. We've had some eyes in the bushes at one point.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling about those elements?
So what is the name of that other island? Because that's also another character.
Yeah, the
Outlands,
the upper head or something like that.
Upper lands,
upper beach or whatever it's called.
Yeah, whatever it is. We have to remember those are separate. You have to get in a boat to go over there.
Yep.
And I feel like there's a bit of symbolism with the boat on the water, because in the horror sequences we see through Riley, when he sees flashbacks, there's also a little scene of him in a canoe on the water. So it's like he turns his head, you see his head turn, you see the flash of Terabeth, and then you see him in a canoe on the water, and then you see Annabeth, and then you see him on the canoe so there's something there that's all tied in.
Mm-hmm.
We know that he used to go to that island as a teen and get into trouble, and he drank
Mm-hmm.
on that island. So is that the start of his drinking issues? And we see that his brother and Uker and all the three boys, they go over there too, and they drink, but he turns it down. Warren won't drink, and it's because of not only his parents, but he could drink on the island and his parents wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't. He knows that's something that his brother had trouble with, so he stays away. He's respectful of that. I don't want to repeat his mistakes.
Right.
And I feel like that island is also a character.
Absolutely.
That's where all the bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the flyover is. That's initially where the eyes are. And Warren sees the eyes above, so like a person's eyes, but they look like cat's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the second episode, we see Erin, who sees those
Mm-hmm.
same eyes in her bushes, and also the swooping on our island. So is that island entreating? Is it encroaching on our island with the cats coming over? And we know that swooping figure has something to do with the cats dying, because we see him attack one of them.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the one that we see being looked at by our sheriff and all that, we see that orange cat, and it's definitely the same cat
Mm-hmm.
that he picks up and attacks.
Right.
So we see that, and we also see through all that Wade, the mayor or whatever he is he the mayor?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And he wants to explain it away. He wants it done.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's poison. It's it's not the oil spill. It's not something weird. They have to have been poisoned by something. The poison that's been put down here, it's being washed over there. It's that's it, done. Let's stop investigating, because he doesn't want anything bad. He wants everything good on his island. And I feel like we're going to see a lot more of that other island, where it's the throwaway right now. You could easily forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's going to be huge. Like maybe things will shift over there at one point. Please don't tell me
Mm-hmm.
whether it does or not.
I'm gonna say.
But I see foreshadowing there. And
Okay.
again, I'm coming from a place where I've seen a lot of his other stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I can see some things happening with the canoes, with the boats on the water, with the poison everywhere, with the other island that's inhabited by these feral creatures. I feel like some of that stuff is going to get turned into something else.
Okay. Jesse.
Yeah, I just really, it is a thing, small towns, teenagers finding their place where they go to drink, and that is
Yep.
the hill watching submarine races, or
Yep.
it is Dazed and Confused, whatever. There is a long legacy of, in film and in reality, of there is a place like in Lake Charles, where I grew up, going to the Civic Center is where people would go to park their car and meet and talk and drink. And so I think that is very much, knowing what this series is,
Mm-hmm.
I am a little like, you see all these people walking in deserted streets and like, are you crazy? Like, no, don't do this.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But it's safe because 125 citizens.
Yeah, and that's what they think. And so we also have a little bit of the feeling of an Agatha Christie novel, that 10 Little Indians, right?
Mhm.
Or like,
Mhm.
Lifeboat or something, where we're a self-contained place.
Yep.
You can't escape.
Yep.
And is the priest a bad seed that's being placed in this
Planted, yeah.
contained society? So
Oh yeah, and we got
Yeah.
his chest too.
yeah,
The
what-
chest that he brought up. And we
Yeah.
see it from the very beginning.
Mhm.
yeah,
When Bev goes to the dock, we see it being unloaded
Yeah.
from the boat, which means he was on that boat. We don't
Yeah.
see him, but we see it
Yeah.
being unloaded. And then we see him in shadow. It's like he gets revealed in these little pieces through
yeah.
that first episode. And I love watching this with a little bit of, I've got to look at every little thing to see if it's going to come up later. I love that. It's just interesting to see all the relationships between all the characters. Ed Flynn and Warren versus Ed Flynn and Riley.
Yeah.
How does he feel about either son? He seems indifferent to both of them. So did he not have a close relationship with either? Is that just him?
Yeah.
But he also says, don't take communion to Riley because he shouldn't take it. And where Warren is actually an acolyte of the church.
Yes,
So we have
boy.
that kind of disapproval thing. Just so interesting with the development with the other island, with the cat.
Yeah.
The cats bothered me and the dog bothered me.
Yeah.
I have to say, because I'm a huge animal person.
Yeah.
And usually when I see an animal die on screen, that's my turn off. I turn it off. But it was part of the plot. It wasn't gratuitous. So I feel like
it was showing that Joe has, on the outside, he might seem like an uncaring individual, but he's desperate for connections and
exactly.
But he can't really show it because of his of the accident. So
and the cats are jarring, but I feel like they're also a part of the story. That this island is encroaching, and it's not good. Whatever's happening. So I got that was tied in through that way. Just so good. I'm really excited to watch this.
Yeah, cool. Lynn and I are planning to watch the next 2 episodes probably today.
Okay.
So we really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to going through this journey with you guys.
Cool. Yeah, I'll just warn you that you might want to have some Kleenex for the next 2 episodes.
No.
Things ramp up rather quickly. I just have to say that from an aesthetics point of view, because like we talked about the music and so forth, but I just find that Mike Flanagan as a horror director has such a great eye for setting up the maximum shots for increasing tension. He's a big fan of, famously in one of the Haunting of Hill episodes, he did like a 19-minute unedited cut, and we get a bit of that in this one at the beginning on the beach as the camera's going around the characters as they're looking at the cats, and then it's following them. That you get some of it with the long shots where people like Aaron and Riley are walking down the path from the church to home. So he does those long unedited cuts, which I love, because then it lets the actors, like, it really lets you focus in on the actors in that. And it's a great way of building tension because you're expecting the cut. So you can say, okay, something's changing.
Different is happening.
But if you keep it in the same shot, you don't know when something unexpected is going to happen. So I just aesthetically really love the way that he directs his work in general. So
even down to where he's in prison and he's sitting there, things are kind of silent, and then he lays down slowly and the camera turns with him. That's like a long scene for a show.
Yeah,
I agree.
And slow, but you have to watch it.
It's
intriguing.
And he sets these series up much the same way that Stephen King writes his novels. Is he lets you get to know the characters first, and then and ground it. And then what's, like Stephen King calls it, it's like hiding the seams between fiction and reality, so that you can't at any particular moment say, okay, now that's not possible. That you realize later that's the moment, but then because you're so into the characters, you don't lose that, or you don't get that, oh, that's phony,
right?
Because you're gone past it already. You're invested in the characters, and you look back and say, oh yeah, that wasn't real, but I'm still interested. I want to find out what's going to happen to the characters. So that the seams between fiction and reality have been hidden, and I just love them.
That's one of the things I really love about Stephen King is everything seems believable. Everything. Time travel seems believable in 11/22/63.
Yeah.
I mean, everything seems believable in his stuff. And I feel like it's the same way with Mike Flanagan stuff. You buy into it because he's built the world. And it's grounded in your world. You identify with it as being part of your world. And if these things happen to you, you think it's weird, but you feel like it could happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so anything else that you guys wanted to add at this point?
No, I enjoyed it. It was really a lot of fun.
I want to binge it, but I can't.
Okay, so the next 2 episodes are book 3, Proverbs, and book 4, Lamentations. So like I warned you ahead of time.
Lamentations. That's
prepared.
That's telling
So,
us something.
Yeah. So this has been a lot of fun. I'm glad that you guys are enjoying it, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the next couple of episodes.
Yes.
So as usual, Jesse, where can people find out where you hang out at?
Yeah, you can find me at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. You can hear us talk about Babylon 5 on the same feed. We are going through the original series episode by episode, having a lot of fun talking about that. And you can hear me talk music on Set Listing Bruce, and we would love to hear your feedback. So reach out to us. Karen, how about you?
Yep, I am almost everywhere at Aleveria, Aleveria. Like we talked about earlier, we're doing the Wordles.
Yes.
And I post my Wordle every day on there. But I also talk about other stuff. I'd be happy to interact with you there on the Twitter machine. And I want to give a quick plug to Daryl, who's my boss, but I've also worked with him doing podcasts forever.
Mm-hmm.
And he has now started a Fringe rewatch podcast.
He did
Oh,
the
nice.
Fringe podcast before, right?
Yeah.
Oh, is
he
that
did
Daryl?
Really yeah.
Okay.
He did really the quintessential
Right.
Fringe podcast and the Lost podcast after that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was pretty much sanctioned by the showrunners there.
Oh, okay, cool.
Nice.
So he's doing the Fringe rewatch.
Mm.
He has a whole community building for that.
Right.
Just go to, I think it's GSM Fringe rewatch. Type that into Google, and because I'll be part of that as well.
Cool.
I'm part of his community. I'm not probably be co-hosting a couple times,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not like I'm a huge part of it. But I am doing the rewatch with them.
Cool.
It's one of my favorite shows of all time. So,
All right.
Oh, good.
And I can be found on Twitter at Lou W. Sitzma, or at the Stephen King Podcast, or on YouTube at Lou's Reviews, where I do the Stephen King podcast, the Writers Podcast, where I interview writers. And we'll be setting up something for this as well, to complement the audio version. And we'll have like a YouTube non-video version that you can listen to, because apparently a lot of people listen to podcasts on YouTube. So we'll be doing that as well. And we'll have that in the Shoreliner notes for you to find out. And yeah, you'll be able to jump into anything from any of us from what we've just listed for you all. So with that, I want to say thank you. Oh,
Yes.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You're good.
I just want to say thank you everyone to listening. I hope you enjoyed what we've discussed so far. Join us for the next one. I don't know. Are we recording next week or in 2 weeks? I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're going to do Fridays. I think offline we need to talk about, since we're doing both. Do we want to start a little bit earlier than 10? We'll play it by ear. I know you got to worry about your time zones, Lou.
Yeah.
So, yes.
So just keep an eye on our feeds. We'll let you know when the next episode's coming out. But until then, as always, take care.
The podcast is in. I will say the podcast is ended. Go in peace to love and serve each other.
Amen. Amen. Hey,
bye, everyone.
There you go. And see.
the proceeding has been a JKL Media production.